Good morning, friends. On behalf of the School of Engineering and Technology, Indira Gandhi National Open University, I, Rakhi Sharma, Program Coordinator ACPDM, welcome you all in this interactive teleconferencing program of Advanced Certificate in Power Distribution Management. Friends, as you are aware that we conduct the teleconferencing sessions on various topics of power distribution in this teleconferencing program, and every session we discuss about some new topics. Our aim is to discuss about the various topics related to this distribution sector with you and provide additional insight and knowledge and sharing knowledge than those given in the print material. And for this we invite the eminent experts from the various utilities and power sector. Now let me take this opportunity to introduce our today's expert. It's our privilege to have Mr. K.K. Chakravarti, Energy Economist from Bureau of Energy Efficiency. We welcome you in this program, sir. Friends, as this topic we will discuss is the energy audit and energy accounting. This is from your course 2, Energy Management and IT Application. We would like you to ask any question during the presentation. If you feel any query in your mind, you can ask any time during the presentation. This would make this presentation more interactive and more informative and effective. Now I would request Mr. Chakravarti to take up his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Sharma. It's a privilege for me to have interaction with our young engineers and professionals in transmission and distribution system. I come from Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which is a statutory body established under the Energy Conservation Act and has a responsibility to implement various policies and programs on energy conservation. So today we are going to have interaction on two main topics which are there in your syllabus. One is energy audit and second is the energy accounting. So in the first session we will have interaction on energy auditing. This has been considered that distribution system is a very important link between generation and the consumers, and so far this system has been neglected, and that's the reason why we have huge transmission and distribution losses going more than 30%, 40%, and in some states it has crossed even 60%. So today is a good opportunity for all of us to discuss various methods, procedures, as well as learn more on this very system and contribute our might in solving the energy gap between demand and supply. So let's begin with the energy auditing of power distribution system. Basically, let me first speak to you on what is the concept of energy management, because energy management is the umbrella under which many tools, many concepts have been evolved. As per one of the definition, it is defined as the judicious and effective use of energy to maximize profits or the minimize cost and enhance competitive positions. So this definition basically relates energy to economics, and every businessman is interested in improving the profits or minimizing the cost. So this definition as such has two meanings. First is how we can make effective use of energy, and secondly, when we do so, how we can maximize our profits and enhance our competitive position. The second definition of energy management is that the strategy of adjusting and optimizing energy. You please read it very carefully. It says the strategy of adjusting and optimizing energy using systems and procedures. Systems could be the technologies and procedures could be the practices, could be the various tools which are being used for adjusting and optimizing energy, and the objective is to reduce the energy requirements per unit of output while holding constant production or reducing the cost of output from these systems. There are three basic objectives of energy management. The first objective is to achieve and maintain optimum energy procurement and utilization throughout the organization. This is in general applicable to manufacturing facilities, to buildings, or the distribution system. Second is to minimize energy costs and waste without affecting production and quality. This is very, very important, that when this is being done, the production should not be affected and its quality should not be affected. And the third is to minimize environmental effects. I hope you would agree with me. Every unit of energy which is being consumed in our home or anywhere, the thermal power station emits about 1 kg of carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas and which is responsible for global warming. So energy use is entirely linked with environmental issues, and when we reduce energy use through best practices, naturally we are going to save our environment as well. Now let me come to the main topic, energy audit. As per the Energy Conservation Act 2001, energy audit has been defined as the verification, monitoring and analysis of use of energy. That is, whatever data is being maintained, it needs to be verified for its correctness, then it needs to be monitored for its sustainability, and then we analyze to work out what are the basic, what are the probable energy solutions, the technological solutions to reduce the energy consumption. And when it is done, then we have to submit a technical report which should contain the recommendations for improving energy efficiency with cost benefit analysis and an action plan to reduce energy consumption. Saving energy doesn't mean anything until unless it is related to the economics. So I can save energy, but at what cost? So the economics has to be there, and the techno-economic, these two combined, when they are combined together, then it makes proper sense. Need for energy audit. In any facility, whether it's a manufacturing or maybe your distribution system, there are three major costs. One is energy. In your case, the transmission and distribution loss. Then second is labor, and third is materials. In your case, your transformers, lines, etc. So if you look into this total cost, in many of our industrial sector, the energy emerges as a top ranker. In some of there we have energy intensive industries in India which have energy cost accounting for 40% of the total manufacturing cost. So when such a situation is there, then we need to ensure that we are in a position to optimize this cost. So conduct of energy audit becomes essential to determine ways to reduce energy consumption or losses per unit of product output or energy sold, or to lower operating costs. So therefore the energy audit is also needed for establishing benchmark. Until unless we know where do we stand, we cannot take any corrective action. This has been effectively used by our cement industries. They have benchmarked right from the raw material processing to the final product output, section wise how much energy they consumed. Those norms have been developed, and then all the cement plants in our country, they compare their position with respect to other best plants, and then they take corrective action. But as far as our power distribution system is concerned, this concept is still to be evolved. Maybe after 2 or 3 years we will be in a position to see that such norms have been evolved and practiced in our distribution system. Now let's come to our main sector, main area, how to conduct energy audit in a power utility. Basically, it involves identifying energy losses and quantifying them, then segregating these losses into technical and commercial losses, then estimating the energy conservation potential and finally proposing economically viable and attractive solutions. Prior to the conduct of energy audit, many consultants or many plant people or many distribution system professionals, they have been carrying out studies, but those studies were simply energy conservation studies, where one component of the total system was picked up and then a potential was projected, which was totally wrong. For example, a distribution system has two transformers and the load is such that one transformer can take the entire load. So these energy conservation studies propose that we can switch off one transformer and shift the load to the other transformer, but without realizing that how much problems would be encountered in future in terms of maintenance, in terms of the increased losses, because all of you would agree with me that our resistance losses or the copper losses are proportional to square of the current which flows. So they never worked out in such type of studies that what has been in the impact of such shift. So, but in case of energy audit, whenever a component of a system is picked up, then its impact on other parts of the system is also looked into that. Energy accounting and energy audit. Basically, energy audit is the overall umbrella, and in energy audit, energy accounting is one of the main part. So energy accounting gives us an overall picture of the energy availability and its use. Energy audit also helps us in analyzing the data in a systematic and meaningful manner to evolve appropriate measures, to introduce checks and balances in the system for reducing leakages and losses and achieve technical performance. What are the aims of energy audit? Basically, these are the main aim. We try to review and upgrade our procedures for energy accounting. This is one of the aim. Second aim is that we review the technical efficiency of a system elements in sub-transmission and distribution system. For example, we would be working out our transformer losses at the operating loading conditions and the line losses. Then third is analysis of the techniques for measuring the energy received, energy billed and corresponding revenue collection. In this we are trying to look into the existing practices and then try to improvise such practices. Then we review the performance of equipment, meters, distribution transformers. Then we segregate technical and non-technical losses. And then finally we establish the norms for checking the consumption of various categories of consumers and overall energy balance in the circles. Energy audit for a distribution utility, it would ensure that input units into an area are recorded, ensures that the corresponding output units are recorded, then it identifies the area of deficiency and its correction, and then it enables accurate calculation of system losses. It is just like when a patient goes to doctor and the patient is being diagnosed, so blood tests and other tests are being performed, and then finally based on such tests the doctor prescribes the medicine, and finally the patient is in a position to recover from its illness. So basically it's the same concept. When we have a fever, we use thermometer to measure the temperature, and based on the temperature that tells us an indication, but to find out why the body temperature has risen, we go for the various tests. So basically, in a layman language, this is what is being performed under energy audit.
What is this output units? Could you please elaborate the input units and the output units in detail?
Input is what is the energy being received at a substation, and then it is dispatched, and when it is being dispatched, it passes through the distribution lines and various equipment, and finally it goes to the consumers, where it is being received. So how much we dispatch, say we dispatched 100 units from the substation, and finally only 40 units have been received at the consumer end. So this audit would tell us the exact status. So when 100 units are dispatched, only 40 units are received, then finally we have the total loss of 60 units. So this audit will help us in identifying such losses. Benefits of energy audit. First, it will help us in load management. We have peaking problem. There are periods in the morning and in the evening when we have shortage. At the national level, we have shortage to the extent of 11 to 13%. That is where the country is not in a position to meet the demand, because in the morning and evening hours the demand goes up, and the whole generating stations are not in a position to meet that demand. That's why the load shedding is restored. So it will tell us, basically audit will tell us what is the total demand which is coming on the system and what type of action we can conclude. For example, when we segregate these demands in the various sectors, it could be the demand might have risen because of lighting load coming in the domestic sectors, which is boosting the demand from the consumers. So these sectoral demands can be analyzed, and then finally demand side management options can be looked into that so as to curtail those demands. Then we can have power factor, active and reactive power flows, and suitable location for reactive power injection in the system. All of us know that our major load is inductive load. All these motors or wherever the excitation requirement is there, even our fluorescent tube lights, all these loads, they demand reactive power. And reactive power, when this load goes up, the power factor of the system goes down, and the generator is compelled to generate more reactive power. And reactive power is a component of the power system where no useful output can be obtained, but it increases the amperes, and we know that when the current flow is increased, we will have less active power generation and more distribution losses. So power factor capacitors are one of the means where we compensate the lagging reactive power with leading reactive power, so as to nullify the harmful effect of the lagging reactive power. So through this energy audit, we will be in a position to find out where are the situation locations where a lot of reactive power is coming on the system. Accordingly, we can decide the location, and we can install the power factor capacitors. You know that power factor capacitors, they improve the power factor from the point of its location to the generating site. For example, we have a power factor capacitor installation on the primary side of a transformer. It will not affect the power factor on the secondary side of the transformer, because from primary side of transformer it is going to react the power factor or the lagging reactive power from that point of installation back to the generating side, that is to the power station side. So from energy audit, we will be in a position to find out the exact locations of such installation. Then we can find out the diversity system, assessment of diversity in the system, then optimum utilization of equipment and services, to what extent our transformers are loaded, to what extent our lines are loaded. Then we can improve the voltage profile in the system, and we can also have details of category wise consumption of loads and proper forecast of demand, and then better system augmentation and expansion planning. So in my view, the benefits are enormous. It depends upon the auditor who is doing the audit, how he is in a position to analyze such data. So as far as concept of energy audit is concerned, it's good, but to practice it in real situation, one has to acquire such type of expertise, how to analyze the data, how to generate data, and then how to analyze, and how to then work out the real situations where we can improvise the system. Let's come to the type of energy audits what normally are being followed. In your book there are 4 type of audits which have been mentioned. First is the preliminary energy audit, second is utility cost analysis, third is standard energy audit, and the fourth one is detailed energy audit. In industry, basically they do the preliminary energy audit and then finally detailed energy audit. For buildings, it is the utility cost analysis which is carried out, and the standard energy audit is a combination of preliminary energy audit and utility cost analysis. As far as distribution engineers are concerned, it is the detailed energy audit which we have to get into. The type of energy audit which is to be undertaken, it depends on the function and type of facility, depth to which final audit is needed, and then potential and magnitude of cost reduction desired. So when an audit is being carried out, it's not necessarily that you should be covering all the 100% areas, but it depends upon the time and the depth to which we need to explore this energy saving potential. Let's have a look at the preliminary energy audit methodology. Basically, this uses the existing or easily obtained data, because the time for such type of audit is at the maximum 1 week time period. So whatever data is available, the auditor looks into that data. Then it establishes the energy consumption in the organization system. Basically, he is looking at the bills, he is looking at the energy dispatch, energy receipt. So wherever freely such data is available, the auditor will be looking into such details, and he is not getting into the complete data generation and data analysis techniques. Then very vaguely and roughly he estimates the scope for saving, and then most likely areas for attention. Basically, under such audit, auditors try to work out the low or housekeeping measures where the investment required is very minimal. So such type of potential are estimated by the auditor. So conduct of such audit depends upon totally on the expertise of the auditor. If auditor is highly expertised, he will be in a position to come out with low cost or housekeeping measures within 2 or 3 days time, depending upon whatever data is made available to him. Utility cost analysis, basically this is not meant for distribution engineers, it is meant for buildings where audit of a utility bill is carried out, power factor, like the maximum demand, and then finally it is concluded how we can reduce such charges which are levied by a utility system. So I will skip this. Standard energy audit is, as I said earlier, is a combination of preliminary energy audit and utility cost audit. Under this, basically what is being tried to establish the benchmark, the baseline. Again, it is meant for buildings where the baseline is established, that is how much unit are consumed per square meter of the area. Or maybe in a manufacturing facility, how many units are consumed to produce 1 unit of output. So again I skip this because this is not relevant to the distribution engineers. I will discuss with you now the detailed energy audit. Basically this is the whole concept what Energy Conservation Act is demanding, and in our manufacturing establishment this concept is being followed. And basically it evaluates all energy using system. When it is said all energy using system, that means it is covering 100% of energy which is being used in the system. That is, whatever energy input has been there in a system and where it is being used, this looks into all those sections. Then it looks into equipment and includes detailed energy savings and costs. So it's a detailed investigation, detailed performance assessment, detailed measurement, and finally coming out with the techno-economic analysis and then an action report, action plan, how to prioritize such recommendations and finally implement it. So this is carried out in 3 phases. One is pre-audit phase, which you can consider this as a preliminary energy audit or walkthrough type of audit. Second is audit phase, when actual audit is performed. Then third one is the post-audit, when once the audit recommendations have been given to the management and its implementation takes place, what the problem have been encountered by the management or the operating staff, and the post-audits looks into such activities and tries to support the management in that respect. Let's get into the steps which are followed for the conduct of detailed audit. The first phase is the pre-audit phase, as I said, where the auditor plans and organizes himself, his team, and then conducts the walkthrough audit, and then he holds the informal interview with the energy manager and explains the importance of conduct of such audit. There could be many purposes and the results. It is resource planning, basically the team gathering, then organizing a organize instruments and time frame, then macro data collection, then familiarization with the distribution system, the first-hand information and assessment of current level operation and practices. This is just a preparatory activity which is undertaken by the auditor in this section. Second, then the auditor will have a brief meeting with all the in charge and person concerned, so they are made aware. They also know that such audit is being conducted, and he tries to get maximum information from such the sections of those sections where the energy is being consumed, the head of those sections. And then these in charge or the heads basically inform the auditor what are the problems they have been facing. Sometimes very useful information is gathered during this step. The third step, which now falls under audit phase, the preliminary data gathering is done through a questionnaire, and the power distribution diagram and energy utility diagram is constructed. And then finally the survey starts, and survey, basically whatever data is missing in this survey, 2 things are carried out. The data which has been collected, it is being authenticated, and secondly whatever is the missing data, that is being generated through the through instrument measurements. Basically the trials are conducted which records maximum demand, power factor, kilowatt hours, etc., and then load variation trend, because load is not constant, keeps on varying with respect to time. Morning load is different, evening load is different, and afternoon load is different. So these trials are carried out to find out the load variations. Then analysis of energy of use, step 6. Under this, the energy balance and energy loss and waste analysis is carried out. And under step 7, after such assessments have been made, then energy conservation opportunities are identified. Basically, when you look at these steps, I would like to categorize in 3 steps. First is the background. The auditor observes from the discussion with the sectional heads, the auditor observes what is the background of that system. Then he makes his own observations. He doesn't go blindly what he has been briefed or he has been told. He makes his own observation. So that comes the second phase, observation. And under observation, he generates data also. Once he generates data, he has data supplied by the management, and with his own data, then he enters into third phase called analysis. So background, observation, analysis. In the analysis, he performs a technical analysis and then comes out the loss areas, and then finally he does the financial analysis so as to confirm his recommendations, and those recommendations which are very sound in terms of both technical as well as financial. And if you would like to summarize this whole audit, it can be categorized into 4 forms: background, observation, analysis, and financial analysis, and finally the recommendation of the auditor. So cost benefit analysis, basically whenever energy conservation opportunities have been identified, the cost benefit analysis has to be performed, because as I said earlier, saving energy doesn't mean anything unless it is related to the economics. Then finally is the reporting and presentation to the top management. This is a very weak area where all of us fail very miserably. Many of us are not in a position to write report properly. That's the reason why a similar the recommendation proposed by a consultant is accepted by the management, but whenever we try to put up such a recommendation to the management, these are being rejected because we are not in a position to reflect our recommendations or observation in a proper format. I will discuss with you when we go into the report writing techniques these issues. Now let me complete the final step, the post audit. Here the auditor tries to assist the management for the implementation of such recommendations and the follow up, whether those projects which have been implemented are really resulting in savings or not. Now let's get into your areas. When we conduct audit in a distribution system, what basically what we are trying to achieve. There are two losses which take place in any distribution system. First is the technical loss, second is the commercial loss. Technical losses are due to energy dissipation in the conductors and the equipment used for transmission and distribution of power. So whenever current flows or it encounters the resistance, conductor resistance, and then there is a loss to the extent of I square R. Second is the commercial losses, which are caused due to pilferage of energy, defective meters, meter reading errors, and energy not accounted for. So basically we have two losses. One is technical losses, which are account of the system. Second is the commercial loss. When we segregate these losses, where are these losses? Technical losses can fall in such category. On the left side you can see there are in 11 kV line losses, distribution transformer losses, and when we talk about distribution transformer losses, there are iron losses and copper losses. Then LT line losses, then losses due to loose jumps connection, then short circuit and earth fault losses, then losses in the service mains and energy meters. They are the technical losses. And in commercial losses category, we have theft by direct tapping, theft by tempering meters, current transformers and potential transformers. Then we have non-performing meters, then we have underperforming meters, the meters which are not being read, then arithmetical mistakes in the billing. So all these losses together are clubbed as commercial losses, because these are the units which are lost, for which no revenue is being generated by a utility. Procedure for determining the technical losses on the 11 kV feeder. It's a step-by-step approach which is very well covered in your course books. I am just giving the summarized version of assessment procedure. First we find out the load factor. Basically it is energy input to the transformer, that is on the primary side. If you have a meter, then we know what is the energy which is being supplied to the transformer, divided by the peak load of the transformer during the month. During the month, how much maximum demand has been recorded on the transformer, and the number of hours the transformer is in service during the month. Basically this is the load factor. In case we don't have meters, then there are some estimates are to be made, which is mentioned here, that energy sent out on the 11 kV feeder from substation minus the energy losses in the 11 kV feeder into capacity of the transformer divided by the total transformer capacity in that particular feeder. In my opinion, this is slightly incorrect, because we are trying to assess the energy losses in the 11 kV feeder that we will not be in a position to estimate such losses until unless we perform the whole exercise. But since it is mentioned in your book, so I am mentioning this thing. But in my opinion, there has to be a meter on the transformer input side where we are in a position to find out what has been the energy input to the transformer. Then second concept is loss load factor, which is a constant, basically 0.3 load factor plus 0.7 load factor square. If you don't want to get into these details, then very simple analysis is also available, where this is normally used by many engineers in the industry. What they do, the total energy consumed divided by the capacity of the transformer, and square of this multiplied by the copper loss of the transformer or the equipment. That's why they work out the total losses, that not total, this copper losses of that particular equipment. Now, distribution transformer losses, basically we know one is the no load loss and second is the load loss. No load loss, it is mentioned on the nameplate rating of the transformer. Very easy to be worked out. It is fixed as long as the voltage is fixed. This transformer, this no load loss is also fixed. In case you have transformers which are operating at lower or higher voltage, then you need to apply certain correction factors. But for all practical purposes, you can take it as whatever the nameplate rating is there, multiplied number of hours the transformer is in service. Load losses, now that load factor what we calculated, and then loss load factor that is being used here. The copper loss is also mentioned on the nameplate rating of the transformer. Then actual load by capacity of the transformer, square of this, and number of hours, and into loss load factor. This is basically what is mentioned in your book. This is the correct method. But if you want to avoid this method, as I said, what method is being followed by our engineers in the manufacturing facilities, what they do, they work out average energy or average load on the transformer divided by the capacity of the transformer and square of it multiplied by the copper loss. That gives you the load loss of the transformer. Calculation of LT line and network losses after transformer, it is we have LT network, and this procedures which is mentioned in your books basically is a rough estimate one through which we can identify the LT line and network losses. And when you combine all this, then we are in a position to find out what is the total 11 kV feeder loss. So the monthly energy losses in the feeder should be computed by extrapolating the daily energy loss proportional to the energy sent out in the feeder for all the feeders for all the months in the audit report. Then energy losses in loose jump connection, these are the losses which have to be estimated because these cannot be measured. So in your course book it has been the loss factors have been given. 1% of the total energy sent out through the 11 kV line from the substation for the 11 kV lines of 20 km and more, and 0.5% of the total energy sent out through the 11 kV line from the substation for the 11 kV lines of less than 20 km. These are the losses for the jump connection, short circuit, earth faults, service mains and energy meters. These are to be assumed. So the total sum of technical losses on 11 kV feeder is distribution transformer losses, LT network losses and energy losses in loose jumps connection. So through this approach we are in a position to assess the technical losses. Now let's come to the commercial losses. This is basically the difference of energy loss and technical loss. Whatever energy has been dispatched and whatever energy has been received minus the technical loss, we have these commercial losses. So to identify commercial losses, basically we need meters, and then the meter reading schedules have to be synchronized. The meter reading schedules of meter readers are revised and made conterminous with the distribution transformers. So on that day, distribution transformer meter is also read, and comparison is made between distribution transformer meter reading and sum total of consumption recorded in all other consumer meters consuming under the distribution transformer. So difference is noted. If the losses are found to be high, actions are initiated to trace the installation of causing such losses. So these readings have to be synchronized, that is consumer readings and as well as dispatch readings from the transformer side. This chart which is very well explained in your course books, briefly explains how the energy flows and how the losses, overall losses are estimated. In this particular case, the substation is receiving 15 million units, output is 14 million unit, so we have a loss of 1 million unit, which comes out to 6.6% of dispatch. Then we have 3 feeders, and feeder 1, there are 2 HT feeders which are going out and through which we are sending 2 million unit and 1.2 million units. Then we have a distribution transformer from where 0.6 million units are being dispatched. Then we have another distribution transformer from where 1 million units are being dispatched, and there is third distribution transformer also where 0.2 million units are being dispatched. If you club all this, then we can find out what has been dispatched and what has been received. In this particular case, the total loss comes to 1 million units. 6 million units have been received and 5 million units have been the output, so loss is 1 million units, so which accounts for 16.66%. There are problems in assessing and such accurate picture of losses. Basically, these problems relate to technical areas. We have energy meters which are provided on 11 kV feeders which are of class 1 or class 0.5 accuracy, whereas at the consumer end we have meters of class 2 accuracy. So there is a mismatch here. Then all the energy which is consumed is not recorded due to illegal tapping, theft, pilferage. Then sending and reading are taken on a particular day, whereas the readings for consumers are taken in a staggered manner. To some extent now this is being resolved through remote meter reading exercises. Then meter readings of some consumers are not taken due to locked premises or defective meters. Meters are not reading at light load, meters are not recording within prescribed accuracy limits. Then assessment of consumption in respect of unmetered consumer is missing. So conditions for perfect energy audit: all the consumer installations are metered, all the meters are read simultaneously, electronic trivector meters are provided on secondary side of all the distribution transformers, the same accuracy class of energy meters are provided both for measuring energy input to the system and energy sales. It's a very difficult, because you can't provide at the consumer end, at least at the domestic consumer or small consumer, class 0.5 accuracy meters. So I was talking to you that the technique or the art of writing report, basically this is what has been mentioned in your book. You may follow the same procedures which I mentioned to you. So when recommendations are being made, it has to be categorized in many forms, whatever you feel like. First it has to have housekeeping or no investment measure, then low investment, then high investment. And then actions are recommended how to reduce the technical losses. It could be reconfiguration, it could be reconductoring, it could be going in for power factor capacitors, then converting single circuit to double circuit, then setting up of more substations, then changeover from low voltage distribution system to high voltage distribution system. All these measures are now being tried by majority of our utility or the distribution systems. These are the basic instruments, audit instruments, which you may not be using it for distribution system, but in industry such instruments are being used. So thanks for sharing with us the concept of energy audit.
So friends, we discussed about the energy management, and so Chakravarti has discussed that what is energy audit and what is the need and what is the concept behind this, and the benefit of energy audit and what is the procedures adopted for energy auditing in distribution system. Now we will take a break of the 15 minutes and will again be in discussion after 15 minutes at sharp 12 o'clock. We will discuss about energy accounting. Thank you.
Thank you.